matter what thing you're clicking on.
Interesting.
That means like if you're using like a reference for like texturing or whatever, you'll
Right.
always have it like on your left screen without it sinking beneath the
That's neat.
large windows. So
Cool. All right. Cool. So I guess this is, whose thing is this? Mani? Okay. Cool. But yeah. So what were you shooting for? Like, what kind of lighting aesthetic were you shooting for? And then also, what kind of lights are you using in your scene?
So this is, the setting is like a garage. So I was going for like, there are 2 windows next to the table.
Mm-hmm.
So I was going for like, kind of midday lighting. And the original scene is kind of like in a cave. It's kind of dark, and I was going for like a lighter version of that.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, so kind of like light, but still kind of shadowy. I'm kind of picturing like overcast day, actually, from your lighting. Cool. So is this, do you have a roof on your building?
I did.
Okay.
But, like, I do. Like, it should be there.
Okay. Maybe it's just like a contrast thing. For some reason, it just like doesn't super look like a roof right here, but I could be wrong. But yeah, so I guess bearing that in mind, what do you guys think of the lighting? Do you think it works with the feel she was going for? Do you think there's anything that maybe is like a little bit too dark or could be tweaked to be improved at all? Anybody? I feel like it looks like there might be a tiny bit of texture stretching in the wrench, but it's kind of hard to, like, right in here.
Yeah.
But I guess, is this like a little paper towel holder?
Yeah.
Yes. That makes me weirdly happy. But yeah, so I mean, I think like overall the basic lighting in this looks pretty reasonable. It might be good to go in, because I feel like, and this could be, I guess, different once, you know, everything is kind of moving. It might be good to go in and throw some object-specific lights in and see maybe if you could get like a little bit of rim light or something like that on some of these, just to sort of help pop them out from the background, because I feel like a lot of the colors are sort of similar. But again, that might be, once everything's moving, that might be like less of an issue. Cool. But yeah, I mean, anyone else have any thoughts, comments, lighting, also texturing? That was a part of the assignment as well. All right. Cool. I feel like everyone probably like wants to use Redshift, but the main reason I saw that people aren't is because they're afraid that it won't be on the lab computers.
Well, they're now on all the lab computers. So.
They've said that before.
Well,
I don't know, but yeah, I mean, I just feel like that's like a thing has always been access to Redshift, but either way. And then, are you using any kind of HDRI for this, or is it just like a dome light?
I did for this, but I'm planning on using an area light and like direct lights.
Gotcha. Cool. Yeah, I would just say make sure like the window has some kind of like background in it. But I am partial to area lights. And then in case I forget to say this, I think I mentioned it before. If you guys are doing, you know, like a closed room like this with 1 or 2 windows, and you guys are going to use an HDRI, make sure that you also put a portal light by those windows. Otherwise, your renders are probably going to take longer and also look worse with terrible sampling. Portal lights tend to speed up renders and also get rid of some sampling. Hello. Cool. All right. Let us. Also, so my plan, in case I didn't mention this, was not necessarily to look at the animations. If any of you guys have like done updates or whatever and you want feedback, just let me know. I'd be glad to take a look at them. But yeah. Cool. All right. So here is diffs, butters. All right. So what lighting were you going for this, and what kind of lights did you use?
Kind of a little bit dramatic lighting. I have an HDRI already in my scene.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of put in orange light, and now, like, as I was learning, I just use that. Because I want like, a little bit more, like, orangey, like, I guess, sunset, I guess.
Gotcha.
But I guess, you know, I guess I have to turn up the exposure a little bit more.
Yeah, I can kind of see like the sort of orange light here, yeah? Was that? Right. No, yeah, I definitely do like that angle. You can always, have you considered, maybe, I was thinking like tweaking the HDRI slightly. You could probably actually throw it into Photoshop and just make it orangier if you wanted
Yeah,
to.
that's all.
Yeah, cool. And I see, and are you doing, for the knives, it looks like just sort of like an emissive texture on?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I
Cool.
don't know if I should keep the one lightsaber or the knife blue, or should I just make them both red? Because it's like realistically what would happen, or just maybe aesthetic blue.
Wait, like if you said,
Or because like for the Obi-Wan version, I have his knife is blue, so you can see the blue kind of.
right. I mean, I think you could get away, I think you could get away with leaving it blue. I definitely do like the color contrast. I feel like since they're both sticks of butter holding knives and it's like pretty action-y scene, like having that visual contrast is helpful. Are these, I expected them to almost put out more light. Either way, but does anyone else have any thoughts about, oh my God, how to, or like whether or not it would be good to keep this blue or change it to, I guess red would be your other option, or what were you thinking?
Or like orange or any like.
You could swap it to maybe like a hot yellow color.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of like blue. Contextually, that makes sense to do like an orange color. Does anyone else have thoughts on that? This is like the, I'm still bad at navigating in Pure F. Very bad. So this is the Star Wars scene with sticks of butter. So these are like hot knives with color on them, or with that are like glowing from presumably heat. I do kind of like the idea of turning it yellow, actually.
Mm-hmm.
It might be one of those things like maybe play with it for the next batch of renders, and if you don't like it, you can always switch it back.
Sure.
One thing that I would say is I think it might make sense to go through and like turn the back of the knife also glowy. Or you could look at doing maybe some kind of gradient for the emission on the object so that it has maybe more of the look of hot metal, or like maybe the tip is like.
I think I can make it gradient.
Do you have a thing?
Oh, like what do you mean? I was gonna ask you how.
Yeah,
I just raised my hand, look at it, like,
go for it.
probably use a ramp when,
Yeah.
and, like, the intensity. Like, you can,
Yeah.
there are multiple, like, settings for ramps. Like, you can use a circular ramp, and then you can always just invert it, like.
Yeah, so I mean, that was pretty much what I was going to say. So you can just map a ramp onto the emission and you should be good to go with your colors. And then if you want to, you could use like the circular ramp and like crush it down. So if you crush down a circular ramp and then repeat on the U and V, you can squish it down so it has more of like a sort of ovally feature, if that makes sense. Let me really quick. This is probably going to look insanely janky, but yeah, so for color, just throw in like a ramp texture and make this like orange and this yellow. So you could set this to, there's like a bunch of different types of ramps, honestly. That is not a good one. I can never remember what they do, so I usually just sort of go through them and click on stuff. But if you do something like this, and then you could place 2D texture and repeat, that was a V ramp, so just do like 5 or something like that. You can see that it sort of like crushed that down, and you could sort of orient your UVs if you wanted to so that you get whatever part of the map that you're looking for, if that makes sense. But yeah. And then that should render out all crazy and bright and glowy. Cool. But yeah. So I guess any other thoughts, comments on the lighting? Do you guys feel? I do like the idea of this being very orangey. I think that would be cool. Also, just I guess think about like at some point, like if it becomes too orange, just make sure that the lightsabers and stuff show up well in the background. And then for the butter, do you have any? Are you using subsurface scattering at all?
No.
Gotcha. I'd recommend trying it out if you're. This is Arnold, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's fairly straightforward. I was going to say I think they have a butter preset, but I don't think that's actually a thing. Feels way too niche. But yeah, I think it would definitely help sort of sell the overall look of the butter. But yeah, I mean, it seems like everything's pretty well defined. Cool. Any other thoughts, comments on this? All right, all the different butters. Cool. Let me. Ah. Sorry, I have to go through and like unzip everyone's stuff. Spider-Man. Cool. All right, so I guess Daniel, what were you going for? What were you shooting for your lighting, and then what kind of effect were you going for?
I like very simple right now, but I'm hoping to add. I might add like a window to the room to sort of have like a lighting sort of sort of the morning or afternoon kind of lighting you have in like a room, and that's like the main source of light, like no like lamps or that kind of thing, or like the daylight coming in.
Gotcha. Cool. And then, so what kind of lights do you have in your scene now? Also, is this, I guess, just sort of like walls and a carpet floor?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, like I said, my light right now is very simple. It's just a dome light at the moment.
Gotcha. Gotcha. But yeah, so I mean, I guess, do you guys, so keeping in mind that like this lighting is super preliminary, I guess, do you guys have any suggestions for like interesting things that might be able to be done with the light if there was like a window or something in here, like you mentioned, that you think could help sort of enhance the overall look of the piece?
Render engine are you using? Arnold? So something you can do with the windows is like have the directional light in, coming in. Like if you're saying afternoon, it would be like almost vertical to like slightly in, just for like that. Like if it because that's like noon.
Yeah.
I don't know. But then another cool thing to have is like because the directional light doesn't really like fill the room. You also would want to have an area light like just placed behind. That's how I light windows. They're probably if you have like a easier way of like lighting, then like then that's cool. But like I have like an area light just right behind the frame of the window.
Yeah.
Like put on the outside so that it can fill it up a little bit.
Yeah, I've done that before.
Yeah. So just
Yeah.
right feel.
I mean, that's also more or less what I do for windows.
Oh, okay.
I was trying to say for the closet. I mean, the part like I didn't really illustrate there's a closet there yet.
Oh, gotcha.
Other stuff, but like like during that scene, I'm hoping like that area is a lot more darker, so you can't really see the back wall and the floor as much. Not like pitch black, but like the sort of like lighting you would see like you roll from the closet.
Okay, yeah. So you could also maybe consider like, I do kind of like the idea. I kind of like the idea of him going into like a sketchy dark closet. Maybe it would be good if you're looking for like an extra source of light. You could put one of those sort of like sticky lights on, if that makes sense, or like just have like a really dim light in the closet if you're looking for sort of extra lighting. But yeah, I like having that be sort of like dark and creepy. I would also say it'd be neat to maybe, especially if there's not going to be like a whole lot of extra stuff in the scene, it might be cool to see if you can get some neat reflections from the window, like Evan mentioned, like the light would be shining down. If there is like blinds or something like that on the window, you would see those sort of reflected on the ground. So that might be an interesting way to sort of get more visual interest in the scene without doing a whole lot of extra modeling work.
Okay.
But yeah, and then did you get my email about the texture flickering thing?
I did have a couple questions for you.
Okay.
I don't know, like now's the time or it's more technical.
Yeah, I mean, if there's time after class, we can do that, or I'll be hanging out in like 244,
Okay.
doing printer calibration for a while, so we can do stuff in there if that would also work.
Okay.
But yeah, cool. All right, last thoughts, comments? All right, I kind of like how everything is like really primary colors in this. It's just like, some like insane part of me is like, turn the floor yellow, like it would just be like super bright and crazy of an aesthetic. Takes EXRs, sort of. Wait, does PureF not take EXRs? Will I have to open these in Photoshop? That makes me sad. All right. I actually just watched Home Alone last night. So. What do you... All right. All the images. All right, so I feel like this is probably kind of self-explanatory, but what effect were you going for with your lighting? And then also what kind of lights did you use for this scene?
I was going for like, it's supposed to be Halloween night, so the lights are just area lights,
Mm-hmm.
and they're inside a little like transparent light bulb,
Right.
and then there's an HDR.
Did you like literally set up manually all of these lights?
Yes.
My God. You probably how did you position the lights on the string?
Just manually.
Oh my
I
God.
know that there's a way to do it with like Mash or something like that, but I didn't.
Gotcha.
Think.
So Mash is also one of the things that I'll be going over in the next like week or two. But yeah, Mash would have been really great to set these up, and I guess it's done now, so it doesn't really matter. But so what I probably would have done is like just wrapped a little curve around here, like a little NURBS curve, and then you could just extrude along that curve for the cable, and generate some little light bulbs. And then once you have those light bulbs, you should be able to set them up as a mesh light, and then they would just sort of emit like a light. It's actually, I think I did a tutorial last year about, or like last quarter, about how to do barbed wire with Mash, which if you swap out the little wrapped pieces of sharp metal would pretty much work exactly the same for lights if you wanted like a twisty cable effect. But yeah, so that's a thing that I can go over later if you're interested. But I do like all the lights, like the crazy colors and stuff are pretty cool. And it seems like most of these renders are sort of the same, and then there were the JPEG ones. Was that?
Yeah, I don't know why they were PNGs and not JPEGs.
I mean that is kind of weird. I like the take one. But yeah, cool. So do you guys, I guess, have any thoughts and comments on the lighting? And it seems like so I guess I was asking about the camera angle itself. So it seems like most of the renders are done from this really far angle, and then these ones are closer. So is that accurate to what the camera is doing in your final scene, or?
No.
Okay, because I do remember seeing that closer up. But yeah, I think I would so definitely watch your sampling. Kind of like, I guess, a later problems thing. I would also maybe work on the wrappers seem a little bit shiny. I think the Reese's one kind of plays. It might be cool to grab like just a normal map for crumpled paper, or grab like if you just sort of Google, or if you ran this through something like Crazy Bump, you could throw this on your wrapper as just like a normal map, and then it would give like a little bit of extra interest to that wrapper.
Okay.
But yeah, and then just like watch the texture maybe of the Tootsie Roll. That feels to me a little bit shiny. I think that's usually like a waxed paper.
Yeah.
And then I think the same comment maybe that I did for Amani, where it might be good to just like tack in some extra lights here and there to help pop the characters out.
Okay.
Because I think the lighting, like when you look at it from far away, is really, really successful of like creating the sort of feel that you were going for. When you get to it up close, it feels maybe a little bit like over orangey, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So one thing you could maybe consider doing is, again, like popping like just very slight lights on each of the characters, so there's like a little rim light or something behind these. You could consider adding maybe some lights or like some little, I'd say candles, but then you have to deal with the flame. Maybe some like lanterns or something like that in the background that would sort of help silhouette the character if you wanted the character to stay darker, if that makes sense. But yeah, I mean, it's like definitely, I think, nice, a nice start. And then I assume the ground is going to be sort of like concrete or something like that.
Yeah.
Sweet. Cool. Anyone else have any thoughts, comments? I guess mostly on these three lightings. All right. But yeah. like I said, I literally just watched this last night, and I was like, I still like the idea to turn it into like a Halloween sort of deal. I think that's sort of fun and clever. All right. Cool. Ah. Oh my God. All right. So, what kind of lighting were you going for, and what kind of lights did you use?
If you look back at the reference video, the entire scene is saturated in this like blue light that was going to be the primary or dominant color, and then
Right.
in the hallways or like the like side alleys that shoot out, I was going to have this like intense red,
Mhm.
similar to the static video I did to try to get that
Yeah.
kind of creepier intense aesthetic. Unfortunately, as I did out the renders, I realized I needed to pump up the blue a little bit more, become more prominent, because the red is dominating it.
Yeah. I think you could maybe even punch in like a slightly brighter blue light, like one of the more of like a cyan,
Yeah.
and that could, I think, help at least in saturation to sort of counter the red.
Yeah.
Also,
I rendered out for each of my cameras at least one section of it to try to get dominant, because a lot of the times I have close-ups.
right.
But again, without heavy blue, a couple of the shots got just buried in darkness. So.
Yeah. But I mean, that's why I usually suggest do renders like this, because then you realize that's the thing early. Also, watch your hot dogs clipping pretty aggressively.
Yeah.
I like that you can actually see the texture in here. A little bit of texture stretchy, which honestly, if this is going to be motion blurred out and you can't tell, I wouldn't worry too much about it.
Yes, it's going to be blurred out.
Yeah, because this is like an absurdly fast clip. You're probably fine. I do like all the crazy like specular highlights you have on your swords and stuff. I think that does really help pop them out from the background quite nicely. Have you done? I remember you said these were gonna be like disgusting, moldy fridge hot dogs. Yeah, like have you done anything with that yet or no?
I debated doing mold, and then one of them is just a smooth hot dog. Then the other one you can tell like the bun's getting scratched up right now. I'm debating whether or not I'm gonna have the green mold kind of getting into it or not.
Yeah.
For now, it's just one's like a clean hot dog, the other's like a scratch, slightly eaten off one.
Gotcha. It's fair. I mean, I still kind of like the idea of having them be moldy, but I think whatever makes sense, or whatever realistically that you have time for. It might be good to go back. I think the bump map on the hot dog is maybe a little intense.
Okay.
I feel like, and to be fair, I don't really eat hot dogs because I think they're gross, but I think they're usually like smoother and shinier. And then I might also do. I might twiddle with the bread texture a little bit as well. I think this. How did you actually make this texture? Was it like texture files, or did you just sort of like wing something?
I took sand texture files and applied it through at a much lower displacement strength, and then added grooves and indents in Photoshop for the
Interesting.
hot dog to get scratchy.
Yeah. I'm not gonna lie, the sand was a solid idea. Like I feel like it looks like there's some tiling issues with the texture, but I think the sand does a pretty good job of recreating bread. I was gonna say it might be cool to go through on the inside of that bun, like where it's cut open, and put in the sort of different texture
Okay.
for that. But the sand is actually a cool idea. I like that. But yeah, cool. Anyone else have any thoughts and comments on any of the textures? All right. But yeah, I mean, I would say definitely like play with the cyan light, and then definitely go through. And this might be some of the instances where like you need to just sort of like attach a light for like one shot to sort of light up the face or something like that. Unless it was like every time I do renders, I get the one frame that has like a weird shadow on it, and then I like freak out. So if this is like,
That happened a few times. It's mostly just because of having the cam to be up close.
gotcha, yeah,
For like the frame or two, and it's a matter of I think I'm just gonna make an extra light specifically for the up close once that gets in and I'm in.
right. If it's like a quarter-second thing where he just like pops into shadow for a really short time, I probably wouldn't worry too much about it. If this is like a constant thing, then yeah, I would probably add that extra light.
It's a constant thing for 2 cameras out of 17.
Gotcha. Yeah, this does have a lot of camera cuts and action to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, cool. I am liking things. I really like this crazy specular highlight. That's fun. All right, so I haven't. Maybe. Cool. So I think we have like 3 or 4 more vendors. All right, cool. So what were you going for lighting, and then what kind of lights did you use?
So I use area lights as well as the sky dome.
Cool.
But I don't really like the lighting that I chose,
Mhm.
so I think I'm gonna play with it a little bit more.
Gotcha.
I wanted to like, I wanted to be more like kind of darkish, like the HRI I chose is the sunset.
Mhm.
I don't know, it didn't really work that well, so I think I'm gonna change it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Watch you have like a tiny crack between your floor and your wall. But so what were you, I guess, hoping for with your lighting? Because people perhaps would have ideas about like ways to achieve that.
I wanted it to be like, kind of like the light was peeking through the window,
Mm-hmm.
and it was like, I don't know, like, not during the day, but more towards like sunset time.
Okay, so maybe kind of like overall, I'm getting like overall dark room with kind of like 1 or 2 beams of light shining in.
Yeah.
Okay. Hmm?
Josephine, what render engine are you using?
Final.
Okay. See, there's this really cool like light that I know of in Redshift that can easily simulates sunlight really well. It's called physical sun and sky, but I don't know if there's an alternative like that in Arnold.
It's also called physical sky.
Oh, really?
Indeed.
I didn't know
Yeah, it's yeah, I mean that is actually a fair point. I don't use it. It actually usually renders faster than an area light. But if you're in Arnold's, yeah, it's just physical sky. Render. So it kind of like, this is like more or less what it does by default. You can go in and I don't use these very often. I usually just use them to like default light stuff. But you can kind of see that like as you tweak some of the settings, you can change sort of like the light's color. If you play with elevation, it'll sort of like the lower it gets, it makes, why am I zoomed out so far? It'll sort of make like a sunset effect. You can change where the light is in the sky. So yeah, I mean that's definitely like a thing that you or like anyone else can play with, because it is a really nice way of getting some fairly reasonable looking natural lighting. And again, it does render reasonably quickly. One thing just like not relevant so much if you're doing a room, like a scene in a room. And I could be wrong about this, but it does tend to just render black below the ground. And I will be salty if I see that in final renders. So just be aware of that. But yeah, physical skies are nice. Where am I going? But yes, that's definitely a thing I would recommend. And then since you have like the moving train, it might be kind of cool. I'm always a fan of like putting blinds and stuff, so you get like cool sort of reflections. But it would be neat if the train sort of like maybe at a dramatic point in time ran through that beam of light, and you'd have the light sort of like whooshing over. And what was the so I know there's like a tunnel in this. I think in the beginning. What was the plan for that?
So I think I'm gonna change my camera angle because there's a lot of the room that is not visible and that I worked a lot on.
Right.
So I think I'm gonna start it underneath the bed and like maybe have it go underneath something. I'm not too sure yet.
Gotcha. Do like a chair or something. Yeah, I mean, I feel like that'd be a point where you could get some like really cool lighting. Was in the original clip, was the tunnel lit at all, or was it just like dark for a few seconds?
It was dark for a few seconds.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that makes your life easier because you don't need to think of reasons to justify lighting under a chair.
Right.
Cool. But yeah. And then I guess what's the texture on these? Are these floating handles right now?
No, they're not. It's like a navy blue, those like.
Foldy cloth cubes?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say I might tweak the color of those a little bit.
Yeah.
You could also maybe consider doing, again, completely up to you. I have a bunch of those in my office, and they're all different colors because I just sort of acquired them at different times. So that could be another way to sort of add visual interest or something if you wanted to. Oh, one thing that would be maybe really funny. So I remember this being sort of like forested. I was like, what if there was like stickers of like tree decals on the walls or something weird, which could be a terrible idea. Feel free to discard that entirely. But I don't know. I was just sort of thinking of ways to maybe get more detail into the wall or something if that was like a thing that you were planning on doing.
I did put a bump back on the wall, but I don't know if you can't really see it.
Oh no, I did actually notice that. I do appreciate the subtle bump, and it's like it feels reasonable for a wall. Like it's not overdone, and it's like just enough to be visible. So I think that is nice. One thing you could do if you wanted to compensate for like this little gap in the floor is just like throw some really simple molding on there and just clip it through the floor on the wall, and that would fix that and also add a little bit of visual detail. But yeah, cool. Anyone else have any thoughts or comments on ways to maybe twiddle with the lighting? All right. And once again, I forgot to unzip the next project. Doo-doo-doo. Okay. I'm gonna have to. All right, 5 seconds. All right, so same questions. What were you shooting for lighting, and then what lights did you use for this?
I feel like my texture didn't turn out the way I wanted it to turn out,
Okay.
especially for like the cake part, because
Wait.
I could not for the life of me make it look like it's not shiny.
Okay, so I'm gonna assume when you said shiny that this is the cake texture.
No, not the white, the brown. Yeah, that.
Okay. How were you trying to texture it? So what? I mean, I see there's like a pretty extreme bump map on this.
Yes. What I basically did, which might sound disgusting to a lot of people, I stole bread texture from textures.com,
Okay.
and I just used the inset part of the bread texture. So
Why
it looked like the cake.
Okay.
Or, I don't know.
I think that makes sense. I think I see what you're saying.
But I think the texture is too big.
Yes. I would definitely agree with that. Cake and bread are like some of the most annoying things to texture in my opinion. And this is, so what did you do to try to make it not shiny? Like, did turning the sliders down just not work?
Roughness is all the way off the list. And I tried to make the bump less strong. This is as weak as I could get it to be.
Interesting.
Oh,
If-
also I struggled with like texturing just frosting in general.
Yeah, that would also be a huge pain. I have a bad suggestion for the frosting. Off the top of my head, I don't know why it seems like your sliders weren't working. My initial thought would be to just reset up that material and see if that helps. And maybe like before you map in the stuff, like turn the roughness all the way down and just like make sure it's responding. If that doesn't work, feel free to send me your scene and I can take a look at that because it does sound weird. For the frosting, that's also going to be a colossal pain to texture, especially if it looks like you're going for a pretty, like, that sort of thing where they like make it lumpy with the scraper. You could go into ZBrush and manually sculpt it, but bear with me. You can reduce the number of polys dramatically enough where you'd get the shape that you need, and the mesh would be reasonable to just import directly into Maya and use. So if that's a thing that...
The problems for this is that be around the stairs that are different?
Um,
So like the frosting is one thing and the stairs are another.
right. I mean, honestly, I'd probably just go in and just not sculpt the area around the stairs. There are ways where you can sort of, based on the UVs, do like a little bit of a mask. Or just go in before you start sculpting in ZBrush and just like hold down control and it'll paint on like a little gray mask. So that whenever you're sculpting, it doesn't affect that area. So that would ensure that you have that. If that's a thing that you're interested in, I can go over that later. Otherwise, I would suggest maybe just go for a frost. I have two bad suggestions. Well, one suggestion and one bad suggestion. Just go for a frosting that is less textured and like less lumpy, or maybe switch it to something like fondant if you were so inclined. Fondant is so smooth. Yeah, I think fondant reads better on a cake than like textured on a ground, and I say that having worked with fondant for several years. My other bad suggestion is just choose a frosting texture that's less aggressive, and then just cover the ground in sprinkles.
Oh, I wanted to ask, how can I do that?
With mesh. Just grab your mesh and go and just pretty much distribute sprinkles randomly across the surface. I'll be going over mesh either if there's time today or next week. But yeah, it's a fairly straightforward process. Yeah. Cool. So this whole thing is taking place on a cake?
Yeah.
And then, okay. So is this, I guess, this would be like sort of like a large, fancy cake. It basically looks like you put cake textures on the environment itself and not tried to do like the cake specific shape, if that makes sense. Okay. Cool. I do like how you've, I assume it was intentional to sort of like stagger the layers, or are these the stairs?
These are stairs.
Ah, okay. So I might actually go through and maybe make this part a little bit lighter, because I feel like or think of, so you've pinged my thing where I did do fancy cake decorating for like 6 years. So think about how, if this was a cake, this would be made. So you'd have, I mean, this to me is either like a flat cake with this whole part cut out, so like this whole part would be inside of cake texture, or you would like build this up with strips of individual cake, in which case you'd have something kind of like you have now, or you get a pan with stairs in it and bake it, in which case it would all be sort of crust texture.
What I imagine it would be like built up from crackers, like biscuits or something.
Ah.
Just like.
Okay.
But I couldn't find a good texture for that.
Gotcha. I mean, if you're shooting for biscuits, I might say actually just manually make some biscuits and then like make them into stairs. I think that would honestly be simpler than trying to texture it on. I do like the stacked biscuit idea. Like, that's actually really cute. You could do those like those flaky wafer cookies.
Yeah.
That would be probably reasonably not awful to texture and also very stair shaped. Cool. And then I guess these are like birthday candles?
Yeah.
Sweet.
Instead of lamps.
Yeah. No, I like that. But yeah, cool. So I mean, does anybody else have any thoughts and textures on lighting, maybe different ways to achieve sort of cakey finishes? You guys are super talkative today. I do actually like this icing texture. Feels good for like a tundra. I think if you want to use this, if there's a way to convert this to a displacement map, I think that might work better.
Oh.
Or is it?
That's like
Yeah, so displacement would definitely be better for that, because it would actually like make the surface lumpy, which would help, I think, sell it a bit.
but it's low poly, so how would
Displacement maps shouldn't matter.
Geometry?
Yeah, like they'll, yeah. What?
Does it add geometry?
It doesn't. No, I mean, it doesn't add geometry. It'll just sort of render it. It'll like fake add geometry for the render, so that it actually like curves the surface of your model without actually adding that geometry into the scene.
Okay.
If that makes sense. You had a thing.
Oh yeah, like you had that question about like like there's a option in Arnold, like if you look in like the what's it called, the shape. One sec, I'm gonna find one here since I have
Are you talking about the like subdiv
yeah, the
subdivision option?
Yeah, there's an option like subdivide a few times like
Mm-hmm.
at render time, so that it's not in like you don't actually like model with like a lot of geometry, but like it then creates like a good displacement map. Like
Yeah.
I think it does require I don't know.
It does. So it's if you look in the surface or the shape node for your object, scroll all the way down under Arnold or like whatever renderer you're using. And then under subdivision tab, you can set this to be cat Clark is like cat Mole Clark smoothing. It's what Maya usually uses if you hit 3. And then you can add more iterations so that it'll sort of render it smoother than it actually is. So let me see. So let's just do. All right, that. Oh, right, because that doesn't do anything. Hang on. All right, so you can maybe kind of see that it's like actually rendering this low poly. We can see like the hair sort of clipping through here. If I set this to Cat Clark, it goes through and it'll, like you can see it'll smooth that, but it's still like a low poly model. So yeah, that's actually a fair point. I forget that exists sometimes. And then if your displacement map isn't showing up the way you want, if you're ever using a displacement map, you can turn the number of iterations up, and that'll basically add in more fake geometry for the displacement map to work with. Yep.
But it'll do that at render time, so when you're actually in there modeling and whatnot, then you don't have to worry about like a bajillion cases to like work around.
It is true.
Yeah.
I've gotten so used to modeling for 3D printing where you actually need the geometry that I'm just like, haha, just sculpt everything in ZBrush, it'll be fine.
But like what I've been trying to do for all my assignments is just make it look good.
As low poly.
Instead of video.
Yeah.
That's why I'm like so against adding polys, because I want to make everything as low poly as possible, yet look somewhat good.
Gotcha. And that's a fair point. If you are trying to stick to like hardcore game aesthetic, most games, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong because it's been a few years since I've actually done stuff for games, I think they don't take displacement maps, so that is a fair point. That being said, if they were gonna try to pump in a texture like that, you could throw in like a little bit more geometry, and it wouldn't hurt anything. Like most game engines nowadays are robust enough where they could handle some, not like crazy sculpting detail, but they would handle some like lumps in the texture without an issue. And it seems like the rest of this stuff is sort of low poly enough where like I think you could get away with it without having too much trouble. But yeah, I think I would mostly just say watch. So like the fact that the HDRI is that functioning as like most of your background texture. So if that's going to stay there, I think definitely try to make your textures as realistic as possible, because you do have that like really obvious contrast of like a photo in the background. Other ways you could try to find ways to maybe obscure that a little bit so it like wasn't so much a focal point.
Yeah, I want to add more cake top decorations.
Sweet.
Right now my scene is kind of bare.
Gotcha. If you ever need, for some reason, information about how cakes are actually made, let me know. I can provide this information. But yeah, cool. Now I'm picturing this like being set in a bakery. But yeah, anyone else have any thoughts, comments, suggestions? All right. Always a fan of cake. So that was. All right. All right. Cool. So what were you shooting for lighting, and then what kind of lights did you use?
I think I was trying to do like a mood light version.
Cool.
I feel like a skyline light, or like
Mm-hmm. I really like the effect that is happening from this light here. Only thing I would say is just like make sure, I would model in the source of that light since it's pretty visible in your scene, and just like throw a little light bulb in there. It'll kind of make it more believable of like where that light's coming from. But yeah, I mean, anyone have any thoughts and comments on the lighting? I just think it makes, I don't know. I really do like the effect that you made with that like one light. I also feel like everything is like pretty visible. And you do get some like nice specular highlights sort of on the soda can and like the juice bottle. I feel like it looks like the texture on the Cheerios box is slightly not to scale. So I would maybe fiddle with that, but it seems like the rest of the stuff is pretty good. And then so it looks like you opted for just sort of do diffuse texturing on everything and then do other stuff later. Cool. Yeah, because I was going to suggest like the different shininesses for this, but you haven't gotten to that, so it's fine. But yeah, cool. No, I mean, as far as I can tell, like, I think this all looks pretty nice. It creates like an interestingly like ominous sort of feel, but it's also kind of like refined and nice looking. And my brain is like, I don't know how to resolve this, but it's cool. Like, I kind of like the effect. Cool. Yeah, I think mostly just sort of like keep working on your textures, and then model in those little actual light bulbs, and then it's like looking pretty good. Cool. Any other thoughts, comments? All right. So that was actually the last one I had. So unless anybody has any other stuff that I missed, yes.
It was uploaded
Gotcha. Let me double check. What are your initials?
HAV.
HAV. You said HAV?
AJ.
HAV. Okay, yeah, so give me 5 seconds. Try to download that. Cool. Balloon dog. All right, cool. So what were you shooting for your lighting, and then what types of light did you use?
So I wanted it to look like a spotlight on the stage.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of.
Makes sense.
It's like the first frame is in there when you can see. Oh no, it is in the bottom.
Yeah, I don't know how the heck this orients stuff.
Yeah.
Is it this the first one?
Yeah, that when it's looking like from the
Okay.
ground up, I think.
Yeah.
And I used like an area light
Mm-hmm.
to be the spotlight pointed at him, and then I had a very like pretty dim sky dome light.
Right.
As well as another like bigger area light with a bigger spread on the crowd just to sort of illuminate them a bit.
Gotcha. Cool. All right. Anyone have any thoughts, comments on this? Hmm?
Is the balloon, is that's a balloon, right? Like
Yeah.
it's made out of balloon material. Like balloons are just a tiny bit like did you have any like transparency on it, like
No.
refraction? Yeah. Balloons are just a tiny bit like transparent. Like if you shine a light
Yeah.
through them.
No, it is true. I was gonna say the same thing. I actually really like the texture you have. It does read a little bit more like car paint than a balloon. But yeah, I think just like honestly, you probably don't even need to turn on refraction. That would make it look more like a glass dog, balloon dog. But just like a teeny bit of transparency, I think would go a long way to sort of help sell that. But I do like you've done a good job. It feels like one of those sort of metallic balloons where it has like some of those like extra little shiny bits, and I think that's kind of like a cool effect in this. But yeah, and then did you have any plans for doing, so like you can see the Sky Dome light here. Were you putting an HDRI in there, or do you have any other plans for like the background over here?
What I was hoping for was
Mm.
I have a little bit of fog in the scene.
Mm.
And I was hoping to get it at a point where it's like the fog sort of encapsulates the scene and sort of makes it look like there's nothing else outside of that,
Gotcha.
which hasn't really come together yet. I need to fiddle with that more.
Right.
Also, I've considered like adjusting the curtains so that there's less sort of empty space from when it pans over from the back of the stage towards the crowd. There's less sort of looking out at the horizon.
And that's actually that's a fair point. You could just add some extra curtains here, because I feel like a lot of stages do have like multiple levels of curtains. And then that would be, you could sort of like, this shot, then you would have like the curtains here, and then maybe just like throw in another curtain so you wouldn't even see that back area. I do like that as an idea. That's cool. But yeah, I think I can't really tell that there's fog in the scene. I was gonna say if the fog ever gets intenser, it would be kind of neat because you could see from the light, like it would probably catch that fog and make sort of like a little triangle on the dog, which might be kind of cool.
In the original scene, the fog is only like down with the group of
Ah,
people,
gotcha.
it's sort of around their feet.
Gotcha,
So you
gotcha.
can kinda see
Oh,
it
yeah,
around
yeah.
the knives.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think a little more, if it was a little higher but a little less dense, that would probably be good.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. But yeah, so I think I really like the overall look of the stage. I think for the knives, for this, they kind of get lost. I think part of that is the fact that they're all sort of facing forward, so you kind of get that like weird effect where there's like almost nothing in the middle of the screen. How did you populate these? Did you like manually place them?
Yeah, I just like copied them a bunch.
Gotcha. I was gonna say, so you could do a thing if you were so inclined, and I'm not saying you have to. If you set this up with mesh, you would basically just make like a little plane and put a knife on like every vertex or whatever of the plane. So it would like automatically line them up in this sort of very grid-like pattern you have. And then you could add just like a touch of randomness to their rotations so that they would all be sort of like, not like crazy random, but just like slightly more random. And that might make them a little bit more visible if that's something that you cared about.
One thing that will help with that, especially in that scene,
Yeah.
looking down at them, is the knife in the middle, who's currently in the outliner named Big Cheese. I'm gonna give him a totally unique texture so he looks different and stands out from the rest of them.
Yeah. I definitely also think that would help. It might be also good to do something less gray for the floor. That would also help the knives stand out a little bit. And I was like, oh, what if they were just on a giant bamboo cutting board with a stage on it, question mark? But I think that would help. I do kind of like the black and white aesthetic, though. I just think it is a little bit hard to see the knives in this. I think even if this one was like retextured, it maybe wouldn't quite be enough contrast. And then just like maybe also watch for like some of the camera angles. You can sort of see like the end of the sea of knives. Where like, I don't know if that's...
I think there's another row of knives coming.
Oh, is
Yeah.
Yep, you're right. Ignore me. I do like this, so this is quite funny. I think the other thing that might be cool, so I don't know if you were working off like a specific reference for your knives. I feel like usually they have different color handles, but I think I have seen sort of little knives like this where they are just like a solid strip of metal. But the handles could potentially also be another way to introduce a little bit of contrast between the knives and the background. And if you wanted to, you could also vary the color of them ever so slightly so that they were sort of like less monochrome. But again, the monochrome is kind of cool. But yeah, anyone else have any thoughts or comments on? I forgot that he slowly gets his ears shot off. Anyone else have any thoughts and comments on the lighting and texturing? Cool. I do kind of like, if you just like look at it far, it's like you kind of see the progression of like dark to light. And I still have no idea what order Pure Ref is laying these out in, but yeah. Cool. Cool. Did I miss anyone else's stuff? Yes. Was that also submitted?
It literally
Like just submitted? Okay. Huzzah. Alright, so while I am downloading that, what were you shooting for with your lighting and...
So I didn't include the reference, but essentially the scene is, it's in like a glass room of sorts with a very reflective floor, basically 100% metallic floor. A lot of them has some lights built in, and there's like a neon thing going
Oh my
on.
god.
with that the sign. It's a lot more orange in the movie, but that was just a fun reference that I found online. So
Right.
I decided to go with that type of neon sign instead of the original one. My renders look really dark, and I can't figure out why. Because I put them, like the preview in Maya, right up next to the actual rendered out image, and the preview looks perfect, and then the render, relative to what perfect is, and then the render is ridiculously dark. I cannot figure out why that keeps happening.
Yeah, there's a few ways to fix that, but go.
So I was like, that happens like a lot.
Yeah, it's awful.
But in the when you actually go to render it, where's it called? No, it's not there. There's an option when you're saving the image to. My goodness, this just doesn't really work with me. When you're saving the image, there's a box that you want that's right next to the image that you want to save, and it defaults to raw image, which will like make your
Sure.
image
Yeah.
so much, which will make your image darker.
I bet
You
you
want-
like this will say that too.
You want to like change that to color managed. That's like the one way,
Mhm.
unless it's like a different problem. Like that's
I bet you that's
usually
it.
what happens.
I can
Yeah.
honestly find that out right now.
And this is so. That is a fair point. I mean, usually I just sort of save as like a high quality TIFF, and it'll just save it however I want, and I get extra data to work with. I don't.
These are all PNGs, so that
Yeah.
probably is part of the issue as well.
But I've seen that option actually pop up in different render settings. So which Evan, which one were you just in?
I just clicked Arnold. Like
Yeah.
You were right. It is the raw image thing. Looking right now. I bet you if I save it out, it will fix that issue. But yeah, there was also
Yeah.
a video in there of the flickering of the neon sign in the back.
Is that did you make that neon sign as like curves
Yeah,
or okay?
Well, it's from a reference. I just found
Right.
like, a neon sign online and then went into Illustrator
Ah.
and like pen tooled the entire thing.
Nice.
And then from there Tinkercad to make it into like a piece of geometry.
Yeah.
Made it emissive, copied it over, put a light in front of it so that it shines through the scene.
Cool. Yeah, the Tinkercad trick is magical, right?
It's
looks
amazing.
so good.
Yeah, it saves so much time.
But yeah, no, I definitely like the way that looks. I think it is a little bit hard, I guess, to comment on the pictures because they save different. If you want to like resubmit them or whatever,
Yeah.
you're welcome to after you re-render. But yeah, I mean, I do really like the sort of crazy neon sign in the background. And then what were your render times like? Since there's so much glass in this.
Yeah, it's a lot. I can actually tell you because I made a note of all of them when I saved it.
Gotcha.
Just give me 1 second, because this is on my computer at home, so I have to.
Gotcha. No worries. I don't know, it was mostly just sort of curiosity.
It's a lot. Like
Yeah.
that. Yeah, really long.
Define really long.
Like 179 minutes long.
You should fix that before you have to render.
No, I mean, I clicked. I knew that was going to be long. I cranked the settings really high.
Ah,
I
okay.
clicked it and I went to sleep. So that wasn't as big of an issue. I was looking at, like, I mean, my computer's kind of garbage at home. So
Gotcha.
that's why I was using Zerto to render stuff.
Okay.
Not Zerto, Zinc.
Okay.
But, yeah, maybe like 10 minutes if I, bump down the settings and do it in
Gotcha.
a smart way.
I've had worse for render times. I would recommend like whatever you do, just like make sure the samples look reasonable, and that might be sort
Yeah.
of cutting out some glass or like twiddling with.
Yeah, well, the good thing
Some
about
stuff in post.
Zinc is you can spin up like 50, 64 core CPUs
Yeah.
and just let them go. So
Mhm.
it kind of, really boosts the ability that you can render.
Yeah, that is true. But yeah, no, I mean, I think it looks like there's good stuff going on. Yeah, the image is saved a bit dark, but I really do like the neon sign. It's pretty sweet.
Cool, thank you.
Anyone else have any thoughts and comments? All right, cool. Did I miss anybody else's stuff? Okay. And is that submitted, I take it, recently?
It was at 8:50.
Say again?
It was at 8:50.
Oh, if that's the case, it should pop up. Are you TAS, yeah?
Yep.
Okay. I did have that. I think I might have just missed it. Oh, hang on. It's yelling at me because all the images have long names. So last time I tried this, I copied it to the desktop, and then it stopped caring that the file names were long. It also apparently uncompressed it, which is exciting. All right, to Photoshop. And I asked this in my last class. I'm not really a creative cloud Photoshop person. Does anybody know a way to just like close a bunch of images at once in Photoshop? Okay. I feel like that's probably not a thing that anybody ever needs to do. All right, cool. So what were you going for your lighting, and what kind of lights did you use?
So yeah, just a snowy day, kind of outside, and then a spotlight at the very end, and then the sorts all around.
Gotcha. Cool. Anybody have any thoughts and comments on the lighting? A very merry sail. I love these like super sketchy signs. Like I kind of do like them actually. I think they're kind of funny as like a weird aesthetic thing. And then do you have any plans to do more texturing on the snowmen, or are they pretty much done?
Yeah, I was thinking about doing like some kind of map on them, but like
Mhm.
I already edited those things manually, so
Okay.
I don't know if I didn't really experiment with
Yeah.
adding a map to them yet.
I mean, I think the shape of them is pretty much fine. I was gonna say it might be cool to get a little map for, I guess like roughness, so that because like if you've ever seen snow sort of like catch the light, it has like all those little twinkles in it.
Yeah.
If you could get that kind of effect, that would be really cool. And then you also might want to look into subsurface scattering. So like if you have like a pile of snow, the light would sort of go into it, bounce around a bit between all the like different pieces of snow, and the subsurface might help with that. I do like the Christmas lights. So why is this only this one patch lit up blue?
Because mesh lights weren't working with me
Gotcha.
for some reason, so
I mean,
it just wasn't working for me for some reason.
fair enough.
I do plan on doing them. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't want to do every row because I feel like that would be weird. So like maybe like every other row of
Gotcha.
that building.
Gotcha. Yeah, because I mean, I think the light effect you have here is cool.
Mm-hmm.
I was just like, wow, this is like one little patch of like cool blue lights. But I like the sort of like crazy trippy effect that makes. I also might recolor the car so it's at least like a little bit not. What kind of car is this actually? Were you modeling it off of like a specific thing or?
Yeah, I think. Yeah, it was supposed to be a Lamborghini.
Okay. I clearly am not a car person. I have a 2005 Honda CR-V, and I will use that until it explodes. But yeah, it's definitely like it's a cool model. But yeah, like maybe like a recolor would be cool. I like that you found a really nice HDRI for the background. I might also look at ways. It's not something I find super noticeable in a lot of these renders, but like every once in a while you can sort of see off the back of that ground plane.
Oh, okay.
So I would maybe just throw like a little wall or something in there, and maybe like a bush or two. You can just do like a poly paint bush, and that would sort of help blend between the background and the image that you have. But yeah, cool. Anyone else have any thoughts or comments? All right. But yeah, I mean, I think this definitely captures the like lit by storefront. I really like what you have going on here with the light like wrapping around the side of the snowman. It might be kind of cool maybe to see if you could get that on the other side or have something like on his face.
Yeah, the hat blocked all the light.
Yeah.
When I took it off, it did look good. But
Yeah. I figured that was probably a thing. So that might be like one of those weird instances where you just sort of like slip in an extra light in there and just like, yeah. Are you using Arnold Redshift?
Redshift.
Okay. So is this then like a Redshift spotlight?
Yes.
Okay, sweet. I'm always suspicious when I see spotlights because I'm like, Arnold doesn't have them, and the Maya ones are gross. But yeah, cool. Good stuff. All right. Did I miss anyone else's stuff? All right, in that case, we're done with crit. Really quick, I just want to go over the assignment for